A text which I could read to you about failure. I wanted to write a text which I could read to you about failure. It's too loud.
Is it recording? Yep. Yeah, when it says record. Okay.
I wanted to write a text which I could read to you about failure. About the redefinition of failure. In life, at work, as parents and partners, in one's practice. About allowing some transparency of self and one's surrounding situation. About resisting the urge to remove the personal circumstance, to polish and perfect, to stop aiming for the ultra-refined, curated setting, and allow instead the error some glory. Creating a possibility for fated mistakes rather than making sure there are none. Because whatever is on show, we can safely assume that there is a non-show, throwing a much wider and voluminous shadow from what is lacked. The projection of the image of the self onto the self is, after all, a kind of oscillation between the representation and the real. Of all that which is on show, it is that which is not on show, through its absence, what I'd like to see. Instead of the deliberate body, I'd like to see the body that is flailing, swinging about wildly in hesitancy or wobbling with indetermination. I'd like to be party to that which occurs before the facade of the finish is staged. See the messy mass before the machinery of minimal approaches and curatorial cleansing begins. Since the search for this grandeur seems an antidote to the everyday life and its chaotic, cluttered surfaces, and the hidden material of kitchen counter realism has a charm that can be put to use. We can repair the service through breaking. I wrote this text on Tuesday at 5:30 a.m. in my head, when my daughter woke up to ask for water and went back to sleep as I lie entirely awake, half cursing, half musing on the idea of what this text could be. In my mind, I read it to you in a seductive bodily voice, devoid of all the tinny bits that I can't stand to listen back to, with a kind of sing-songy, smooth texture. Then suddenly I make a type of erratic gesture with my arm in a Meredith Monk kind of way and add an entirely bizarre choreography to score my text, which in my amazement is just spectacularly good, entirely improvised and will never happen because I am again asleep and in my sleep I am an amazeballs dancer. I was going to use extravagant there, but in my dream I am an amazeballs dancer. I drift there for some time in an unawake, non-asleep state until 7 or so, when I actually get up and write the rest of this text to the soundtrack of a washing machine, my daughter's favorite TV show, and the silence of having argued with my partner over the most mundane matter, ending a wholesome evening full of fun. The heart quickens when sharing this personal in public. My mind makes a kind of autocorrection in real time of my performance. Because impossible to detangle is the amalgamated status of the artist at an undressing moment when the metaphorical fourth wall is broken through and a quick flashing feeling flutters with nervousness of wondering whether you are making something terrible or tremendous, which in the end doesn't matter, as the uncertainty of which is the entire premise of this work. There is a process of mystification which helps fortify the error in words as intended artistic gestures. You aren't doing it wrong if no one knows what you are doing. And when do you ever know confidently when someone is fantastically failing or triumphantly thriving in the arts? Maybe when the general consensus that something is bad permeates the room, it is okay to address the apparent failure. But when little miscellaneous mistakes are made, we overlook them and fold them into the seams of the larger fabric of fable or fantastic, or in the very rare, the famous framer of forms. No one wants to nitpick. But this is a sadness, because here lies the human, submerged in error and inability. The superior attitude that when on show something should be finished in order to be presented is the kind of makeup filter which perfects the face of making and turns it into manufacturing. But I quickly fall in love with these flaws. I love the flaws of my friends, my partner, my child, my parents, myself even. I love the flaws of the space, the ugly floor, the two modern discrepancies in interior architecture. I love the errors which occur in the everyday, and I feel a kind of fatigue from that which reduces these social relations to paralyzed imagery and pacifying packaging. Our daughter keeps putting sand in her pockets. It becomes evident only much later when it spills out as she dances, or when we lift her upside down by her feet. When do we stop putting sand in our pockets? I am acutely aware of the proverbial shit we step in each day as adults, but this is not that. This is the act of taking soil home. It is such a simple metaphor that any review of it would take away its poetics, and only the simple fact needs to be pointed out that at some point we stop wanting to carry debris in our pockets. We turn them inside out and get rid of all the little artifacts of the life that lives there. The fluff of washed tickets and maybe some antiquated coins and wrappers if a sweet tooth, and we start fresh again. Pour of the scrap sum of one's trivial experiences. If we fail this upkeep of blunders and faux pas, slip-ups and boo-boos, we too will be smoothed over like a perfected face, swapped for something with no actual texture, and forget that skin-prone blemish can be absolutely stunning. Embarrassment can be beautiful, but it is hard not to yield to the universal god of panic when making mistakes in front of others. When I misspell something in front of an audience of 100 people or so, I turn around and laugh a little, but no one thinks my face because I guess it's not as funny as I thought it was. Or people are nervous to offend so they don't become party to the humor of the error or tap into the sympathetic understanding that spelling in performance creates the mind to stand still as when doing maths under pressure. What was funny becomes for a moment embarrassing. I go under or I exist in this fuck-up. Wildly gesticulating, but of course not moving, I stomp my feet, wishing that within the confines of the gallery I'd have an ally look at me and smiles that shit happens. But how not to tip the scales of this balance of mistake-making, of experimentation, of improvisation, which doesn't lead to me duct-taping a cello while someone is playing it. It is a careful scaling of the tastes. Because sometimes errors go from being one, singular and overlookable, and organize themselves, spread themselves out, wrap themselves around you, tie themselves in, link up collectively, and reveal themselves through volume which turns from being a charming dimple, a delicate calamity, to a cacophonous clusterfuck, at which point it is better to stop and simply within this gradual slipping away of the distinction between my introduction, which is just now happening, and what is planned, no longer a kind of schism of possibilities open up. And before a perpetual wave of audible gestures unfurl in a situation of removal of the artist's mystique, I just want to share that I come into the audience for a reason. I made what you'll hear, but I will not perform it. I'm also not entirely sure how I made it. With the most basic of material and obsessive attitudes and some form of starvation and necessities, I was able to focus my tapping fingers, tapping into mercurial inconsistencies. Because even through wavering, a rowing movement gradually speeds up and gains momentum. But the tapping is just a prelude and a mousse-bouche, a metamorphorical, funny figment. The removal of the artist from the situation is the work. Because here is an act which is pre-recorded, but performed without centerpiece and focal point, without dazzling instruments and swift coordinated movements of the hand and head. Here is an antidote to the improvisational virtuoso, needing no notes, no cheat, cherry-picking plum fruits from their loom, a mind like an expanding plaza or infinity pool. cultivated by a controlled culture but unleashing suddenly an off-the-cuff composition for an 11-fingered piano player. I only have 10 and none of them know notes. But to keep the tongue in check in the cheek means a measurable amount of funny that doesn't bridge into bad tastes. A performance about not being able to perform, a removal from the cornering of oneself. Which occurs when entering into the spotlight. Performing the piece as it's made would be impossible. Faking it for the sake of prestige would be a character flaw that never stops itching. So I just press play.
Yeah, that's it.